everybody, Dirili here. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Hakuouki Zuisoroku, the fan disc material or the extras added to the PS3 version of the game. We're working on Sanan, and today we are going to do Shinsengumi Adventures 2 with him, I believe, and then we'll see how much time is left over after that. So you can just sit back, relax, and let me read you a story. And of course, we'll be skipping the things we always do, and I'll show you the choices we have to make to get Sanan's part in this. For the very first time, we have to stay at headquarters, because that's where Sanan is, of course. So he doesn't get to see us as a geisha. Unless he dresses us up. I think I'll stay here. I might mess something up because I have no experience. I don't want to cause any trouble for you.
Good idea. Best to leave this type of thing to us. Take care of headquarters while we're out.
They could dress Hijikata up as a geisha. He actually makes quite a lovely woman, I believe. Okay. No problem, I'll hold down the fort. In a flurry of activity, Hijikata and the captains prepared everything they needed, and it didn't take long before they were on their way to Shinpachi to investigate. After the chaos of a few moments ago, the hallway was now eerily silent. I wondered if everything was going to be alright. I could only hope that nothing horrible happened. I was sure they would be fine, though. They'd been through worse. Probably more than I knew. Yeah, I'm sure they haven't told all their stories. I had to do what I could myself. They were counting on me to take care of things here. With that in mind, I thought about those of us who stayed behind. Most of the leaders were out, so they were likely short-handed and could use some help. With what? Who should I find first? Ah, so this is where, in this side, we get our extra scenes with Inoue and Shimada, but of course we're going after Sanan for today, so here we go. Considering what time it is, Sanan was probably up by now. I set off to see if I could find him. Oh. Stepping into the courtyard, I could see Sanan standing alone under a tree. He looked lost in thought. I called out to him as I made my way over. Hello, Sanan.
Oh, good evening, Yukimura.
He blinked and his eyes focused on me. At his peaceful smile, I was relieved to see him acting like his old self. Maybe he was in a good mood today.
Perhaps you would be able to answer something for me. Do you happen to know where our esteemed leaders have gone? I'm not exactly surprised that Nagagara, Harada, and Todo have vanished into thin air. But it is highly unusual not to see at least one of the others on grounds, Hijikata especially. Did they go out on official business?
I'm surprised I didn't tell him. Oh, well, I told Sanan about the trip to Shinpachi to investigate the suspicious activity of the Ronin and how they planned to make an arrest. Sanan nodded along with my explanation until I finished.
I see.
Does he feel left out?
So they more or less have left to have a good time and drink in Shinpachi, under the guise of spying on a questionable group that happens to be there.
Well, that applies for 3 of them. It doesn't apply to the rest. Huh? The smile was still on his face, but it looked frozen in place. Each word he spoke seemed to freeze the air. I couldn't hold back a shiver. Well, we'd heard reports of strange gatherings and suspicious movements, and everyone went there to see what was really going on. And there really is something going on. My explanation sounded weak even in my own ears. It was the truth, though, right?
Oh yes, that's right. You wouldn't know. Everyone used to make frequent trips to Yoshiwara back when we were living in Edo. I was never able to determine exactly why. Maybe the shogi pressured them into it. But they always ended up ordering large amounts of expensive alcohol. They'd stay for hours and eventually run out of money. I got sent requests to bring them more all the time.
So he was their money mule.
It became such a regular occurrence that I finally got fed up with it and left them to their own devices. I washed my hands of the entire matter.
Oh, I guess that's why they didn't tell him about this. His tone was very soft, but every word held such barely restrained anger that my body broke out in a cold sweat. I froze in place even though I knew that none of his anger was directed at me.
I shouldn't complain if they're going there for the reasons you provided and paying for it themselves. But whether or not that was their true intent is something I'd be in the best position to understand. Therefore, I expect the resulting bill will increase exponentially. My guess is they'll call for geisha, at least one that is highly sought after, in an attempt to be flashy. Worst case, they'll claim they need to stay the night for further reconnaissance. I suppose I must firmly reprimand Kondo for this when he returns.
I had the overwhelming urge to leave the yard as quickly as I could, but suddenly Sanan refocused on me, his lips spreading into a wide smile. What do you have in mind?
Yukimura.
Yes?
If you manage to discover the extent of the monetary damages this time, please tell me. Do not let the others know.
The fierce intent and the stare he gave me was as dangerous as a sharpened sword, and I nearly felt the waves of anger radiating off him. Sure. Am I being sent on a mission, or is he just saying, if you happen to find out? His expression had brooked no argument. I didn't want to know what would happen if I had answered differently. Sanan's face relaxed as he nodded, satisfied.
Regardless, I do hope they're successful in their arrest.
Yeah, they better be, or they'll be in big trouble.
The best result would be that everyone returns unhurt.
Although they might not be any longer after he gets his hands on them.
I'd like to be the last one that doesn't happen to.
I barely heard the words, his head upturned to the moon and his voice quiet. They were stripped bare of sarcasm and floated almost like a prayer up to the darkened sky. Sanan truly believed in the power of the Fury and the Water of Life, and how their proper use would aid the Shinsengumi, but there was no way he wanted anyone else to have to go through the anguish and struggle he dealt with. That was an undeniably true feeling as well, because I thought the same. Me too. I stood next to him, staring at the moon together, and made a silent vow to do my best to help keep everyone safe. Wow, yep, short again, which means I'm gonna go ahead and do his Days Past Part 2, which is probably gonna be longer than I think. November 1867. The protagonist asks Sanan how Okita and Todo are holding up after becoming Furies. He claims they are doing fine, but admits he wished that he would be the only one to experience the pain of being a Fury. Sanan continues, explaining how they will be treated from now on.
Please, give me blood. Your blood.
No, you can't have it, it's mine. The night the Furies attacked me, Sanan was among the men that rushed to my aid. He unintentionally put things in motion by revealing himself to those who had no knowledge of his unusual circumstances. The scent of blood in the room was overpowering, and Sanan found himself drunk on the smell, unable to resist. It was the Water of Life's curse, the stripping away of sanity from anyone who had taken it. That was when, for the first time, I felt the full extent of how dangerous the Furies truly were. Because our beloved Sanan even couldn't control himself. November 1867. The Shinsengumi, fearful of leaked secrets from Ito, who had left the group earlier with his men, decided to assassinate him. The resulting battle between the Shinsengumi and the guardians of the Imperial Tomb was to be at Aburano Koji. However, the Satsuma, with some demon assistance, interrupted before it could begin, attacking both sides. Completely overwhelmingly outnumbered, Heisuke fought back until he sustained a life-threatening injury and had to drink the Water of Life to survive. At the same time, Kazuma attacked our headquarters and easily dispatched the entire Fury Corps single-handedly. Okita voluntarily drank the Water of Life in order to have the strength to protect his fellow warriors. From what I understood later, there had been no other way, but what would happen to them, their futures, now that they were Furies? Worried and confused, I made up my mind to find a chance to talk to Sanan about everything. A few days after the Aburano Koji incident, I made my way to the area of the compound the Fury Corps was restricted to, determined to speak with Sanan. The night I was finally able to talk to him was cold. Winter's chill was going to arrive soon. In Days Past, Part 2. November 1867. I waited until the moon was rising in the sky before I stepped inside the dojo where the members of the Corps stayed. I then began my search. Sanan! I spotted him alone in the hallway and called out to catch his attention. He doesn't look happy.
Yukimura, what are you doing here?
My appearance seemed to have flustered him, and he came toward me quickly, eyes scanning in every direction. Are you worried for my safety?
You didn't forget you were recently attacked by furies, did you? I'm surprised no one informed you that you shouldn't come here unattended.
I'm sorry, but I really needed to speak with you. He must have caught something from the tone of my voice, because he paused and thought for a moment. The words when they came were slow and deliberate.
Yukimura, I'm sorry, but I cannot converse with you here. A few are currently in an unstable state at the moment, and there is much work to be done.
You're right. I'm sorry to have bothered you. Of course he would be busy. I felt horrible for not realizing it before coming. I bowed to excuse myself. With a strained laugh, he leaned in and whispered,
I will stop by your room later. We can discuss things in detail there.
Ooh, that's a bit forward, but sure, you're welcome to my room in the middle of the night. Speechless, I could only nod. I returned to my room. After an indeterminate time, I felt like hours had passed, when in reality, it likely hadn't been quite as long. I heard a soft voice outside my door. We settled into my room and Sanan began to speak.
I assume you wish to ask about Okita and Todo, correct?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I'm not allowing anyone to see them until they stabilize.
His voice was matter-of-fact, and his expression brooked no argument.
The process of becoming a fury includes a period of rejection by the body. No one would want to be seen in such a state.
I understand.
I know you are likely feeling conflicted, but you must remember, regardless of how it occurred, they themselves choose to take the water of life.
His tone had lost its flatness. Now it was almost as if he was trying to convince me.
Todo reached for it because he sustained a mortal wound. His desire to live was such that he made his choice. We've known each other for a very long time, so I'm glad he survived, but I have a feeling he will come to question whether his decision was the correct one.
His brow wrinkled and his eyes lowered. I could see clear concern for Heisuke on his face. He was truly worried about him.
Okita, on the other hand, wished to be able to fight once more. He drank the water of life to overcome his illness.
He smiled, and it flitted through more emotions than I could count.
Maybe his reasoning was similar to my own.
Yep, I think so.
I certainly understand the need to make sacrifices in order to obtain the necessary power. But I wonder if he considered all repercussions first.
Sanan blinked as if just remembering I was there, and then rushed to reassure me.
They're both progressing well. There's no need to worry.
Oh, okay. The words were kind, though the tone was cold and clinical. That's Sanan for you. It was as if he was building a wall between us, pushing me away. For your own safety. He would have never done anything like that before. His demeanor seemed colder now, crueler.
Some fate. I thought it'd be enough if I turned into a fury.
Huh? The self-derision and pain that surfaced in his laugh tore at my heart. His voice lowered to a mumble.
I made sure I was prepped for everything before I chose to take this path. I had no fear of myself changing. However, I'd wished that they would never have to go through this.
Sanan. His head turned away, hiding his face, but not before I saw a myriad of conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, appear. After a moment, Sanan squared his shoulders and brought his head up.
But it is too late now. They are furies. Most of the Fury Corps was wiped out by the recent attack. This new blood, so to speak, is important. They will soon learn that I will not treat them as living warriors while under my command, but as furies.
Oh, but they're still your friends, too. Come on, Sanan, be cool about it. The smile he gave me was pleasant enough, if not for the edge that was just a little off.
Hate me if you wish. What I'm doing is inhumane.
The cruel twist to his words made me sad. I leave them to you. I trust you. I turned to Sanan and bowed. I spoke from my heart. I'll leave them in your hands. You became a fury first. When their sufferings began, I'm sure you are the only person they can rely on. So... Sanan gave a troubled sigh.
You are quite the odd one. Even after all this, you still trust me.
But... I knew that he was still the same inside. He hadn't changed at all. Seeing him use the powers of the Fury so often and relying on them so heavily made me frightened, but I hadn't forgotten who he really was. The words I wanted to say to tell him that wouldn't come out, regardless of how hard I tried. Sanan didn't notice and continued speaking.
Because you are concerned, I'll do what I can. I promise I shall look after them and guide them in their transition into Fury.
Sanan, thank you very much. All the strain was gone from Sanan's face. Our agreement seemed to bring him peace.
Well, it is time to wish you good night, Yukimura. I apologize for keeping you up at such a late hour.
Sanan. He turned to leave, but paused at the threshold when I called out to him. He glanced back at me. It's been very cold lately. I hope you're taking care of yourself. Have you been sleeping well? I know a lot of things are going on right now, so you might not be resting.
What's that look for?
Well... He raised an eyebrow. Your face has been kind of frightening lately, and I... Every time I saw him, it looked like he was silently suffering, and I couldn't help but feel anxious for him. Sighing, he padded over to me, closing the distance between us so much that the fabric of his sleeve brushed my arm. Huh. Oh, Sanan. Sanan? His eyes caught and held mine. He leaned down so we were the same height, his face filling my vision. The look in his eyes was soft.
Most people would be focused on their own problems at a time like this, but you still hold concern for others. I'm an adult. It would be my own fault if I fell ill. My well-being is my own responsibility.
That may be true, but that doesn't mean I'm not still worried about you. I clenched my fists, raised my chin, and stared him down. He was trying to pacify me, but I wasn't going to let him. His face grew more troubled, and a sigh spilled from his lips.
Sometimes I find myself concerned about your kindness, Yukimura. I am fine. Please don't worry.
The tone of his voice indicated that he'd said the final word. It was pointless to argue more. Oh, okay. Reluctantly, I nodded, and he stepped back, breaking off our eye contact. He smiled mysteriously and chuckled under his breath.
You managed to get me to be kind tonight.
What does that mean? His chuckle bubbled up into a full laugh. His words when he spoke were deliberately evasive.
If I start feeling sympathy for others, it'll cause all kinds of problems.
But it could lead to good things.
Anyway, good night again. Sweet dreams.
Oh. He swiftly walked off before I could stop him. I didn't know what to think. I hadn't spent enough time with him to accurately see his true face behind the slippery words he liked to use. But I think I can trust him. Some of the things he said and did frightened me more than I wanted to admit, but he was a good, kind person at heart. I wanted to believe that, so I decided to hold on to my faith in him and not doubt the course of action he chose to follow. I should have been thinking about what dangers the future held in store for us, but instead I felt calm. I climbed back into my futon and fell asleep. Ah, yes, I can definitely see myself really liking how Sanan's route is going to go, because it's going to be, there's going to be all kinds of insidious things, and we're going to have to navigate around all these pitfalls to be with him and all this, and deal with a lot of psychological issues, not to mention medical issues. Oh, poor Sanan only got 2 videos. Alright, well, next I'll be working on Yamazaki. I really enjoyed time with Sanan, although it was so short. So little. But like I said, again, Kyoto Winds, he'll be in there. He'll definitely be one of the earlier characters I'll be reading. So I hope to see you there or in some of my other videos. And I'd be so grateful for any likes, comments, subscriptions, or shares with their friends to show some support. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all health, happiness, and safety. Dirili signing out. Bye bye everybody.